Hello, hello. Thanks so much for joining us today. We've got a great webinar planned for you, all about managing purchasing in the Microsoft 365 environment. And we're going to be keeping this high level today. So there's a bunch that we can go into, so many different use cases. Yeah, we can certainly get more specific with you. So before we get started, I just want to let you know if you do want to dive in deeper, we're of course here for you. Happy to schedule a one-on-one demo, have a one-on-one conversation, and get more into the nitty-gritty. But also, don't be shy. Use that question box, ask questions today as we're going through. We'd love to hear from you. Happy to answer those questions. And lastly, this will be recorded. So feel free to reference back to this. We'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel as well as to our website. And if you've registered for the webinar, we'll go ahead and email it to you as well. So you're fully covered there. But before we dive into it, I just want to go ahead and introduce you to Ryan Stefani. He is our solutions architect and will be leading us today in our demo and sharing a little bit more about our purchasing solution with you. My name is Krista White. I'm the director of marketing here at Crow Canyon. And we as a company, Crow Canyon Software, we've been in business for over 25 years. We're GSA certified, we're a Microsoft preferred business application, a California certified small business, all that fun stuff. But without any further ado, I really just want to hop into it. I know we've got some good things to cover, and ultimately that's what we're all here for today, isn't it? So without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Ryan.
Cool, thanks, Krista. All right, let me make myself presenter here. Yeah, we'll do clean. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to talk about architecture first, how the application is developed, really. I mean, how it lies within your 365 environment, submission of a purchase request, some high-level form features around submitting a purchase request, the approval matrix. How does it get routed for approval? Who does it get routed to? How those folks update approval tasks, and then finally what we do once the purchase request is approved. And that's going to be a branching option. There's going to be two options when we get there. I'll have one that we can show and one that we'll talk about. So getting started, right off the bat, I'm going to talk about, like I said, the architecture. You're looking at this in my demo environment, right? ProCanyonSystemsInc.SharePoint.com, right? /purchase request. This will live in your 365 tenancy in a SharePoint site with SharePoint lists and libraries being the data source. Right? So I think the question I get the most is, where does my data live? It's going to be totally self-contained inside of your SharePoint 365 Teams, Outlook, extension of that interface. So how is it configured, or how is it built? I mean, like I said, the lists and libraries are really the backbone, pages, dashboards, right? But you're probably looking at this and going like, oh, that doesn't look like standard SharePoint. The name is the giveaways in the title, right? NITRO Purchase Request. NITRO Studio is a proprietary tool set specific to Crow Canyon. We built this originally as an info path replacement, which is a set of deprecated tools that worked in SharePoint on-premise. It's separate from the Power Platform, which is the common tool in 365 now. And there's some reasons that we've separated it out to have our own. It really comes down to a few different things. It's a whole heck of a lot easier to support. It's a lot easier to configure. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then lastly, and probably the most important, is that it's not tied to a user. Right? So let's say I build an application on Power Platform, I get sick, or my child's born and I'm out for a couple months, right? It's not required by me to make changes. So everything is going to be list specific, which gives us the ability to have a bit of, well, control over the application, not limited to who can and can't see it, right? Okay, so that's the architecture. SharePoint-based tool, 365-based tool, built on a tool set called NITRO Studio. It's proprietary to Crow Canyon and included in the application. So you guys will get this as a part of the tool set. And I think the most common question before I get into the features of the application is, can I change it? Can I make changes to the application? Absolutely, as long as you have proper permissions. And I mean, it takes a bit of understanding of Nitro Studio. I mean, there's certain things we'll all say, yeah, you could do it right now. You could learn it and pick it up right now. Or there's other things where it's going to be a steeper learning curve, right? It'll look easy because I do this every day for 10 years, right? But, you know, I think that the end goal being autonomy, not having to rely on Crocandy to make changes is absolutely attainable. It's just going to be a ramp up period to get there. Okay, so submission of purchase requests, right? How do I present this to my end users? I think the most important Microsoft feature moving forward is Teams. I mean, everyone I talk to right now in 365, Teams is the most commonly used piece. So we're taking advantage of that. We're giving the end user or request submitter, right? I use end user pretty commonly. So if you hear me say end user, think of request submitter. An interface to submit purchase requests, right? And what it is, it's our Nitro form tailored specifically to the end user. What do you want to purchase, right? Let's just say new PR. What's today? 4/18/24. Now the cover sheet, the metadata, the SharePoint columns, right? If you hear me say metadata or SharePoint columns are the same thing, you know, the metadata that we're capturing on the form is going to be important potentially in the approval routing process. We'll get to that in a second. But it just kind of, I'm giving you an example of what we can capture, right? What the type of purchase, is it affecting a budget? Is there a priority associated to it? You know, what department is it for? Who's submitting it? You know, the business justification, you know, need A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. And then finally, the most important feature in Nitro Studio, what we call associated items, in this case, purchase items. Giving the end user the ability to either select from like a catalog, right? Probably not the best choice there, Ryan, services, but like select from a catalog, right? Commonly purchased items, pre-populating price per units, maybe vendors if you have it, and then allowing them to add in quantities. The other option is them free typing in, right? Adding in their item. Up to you on how you want to proceed. We keep it in there because I think it's nice to have both, right? And the nice thing here is that it gives you gives them a calculated total. They don't have to do it, right? Quantity times cost per item gives you a total cost, total quantity. And for the end user, they can either save it, come back to it, right? If they're waiting on quotes or, you know, additional information, or they can submit it for approval. Now, from their perspective, they're going to get the warm and fuzzies, right? The green check marks on the workflow to let them know that the request has been submitted. And it's going to route through the approval process. Ta-da, right? Now, before I get that, most questions I have, or like one of the big things I talk about with people is, you know, what content are you capturing on the form? Hey, there's a notification. Love it when it works. So the reason I ask that is because, like I was showing here, you know, we have some examples, but does that content affect your workflow, right? Does that content affect the approval process? And if you're like, hey, if it's this department, it's this manager. If it's that department, it's this manager. If it's, you know, X, Y, or Z, it's this, that, or the other. And hey, I don't see that on the form. Can I add it? The answer is absolutely. It's our forms tool is the flagship of our product. It's very easy to come in and say remove things like, hey, I don't want priority on here. Everyone's going to mark critical. We'll take that off. But I do need another column. I do need some other data point in which you want to track against the request for approval, right? So this aspect is very straightforward, very simple in terms of making changes to the form and how we want to present the form to the end user. This is like one of the lower ends of the ramp ups, right? Now, once we have all of that content captured on the form and it gets submitted, like we saw, it's going to route for approval. Now, what this does is it looks at a list in the admin section, and basically the user groups that we create as a part of this application are end users, technicians, air quotes, right? Finance team or purchasing team, and then admins. And admins may be a part of the finance team, It may be IT, it's kind of up to you guys, but admins have control over changes to the platform, right? Or updates to the application. And in this admin section is where we see things like purchase categories, what they can purchase, that catalog, right? You'll be able to add those items, more content here as well. Again, these are all forms living in the list. So if you want to add more information to say the catalog form, you can, just like I did on the purchase request form. But the approval levels list, this is where we define that matrix, right? You know, is it, okay, help if I click in the right spot, there we go. Is it based on department? Is it based on type of purchase? Is it based on the amount of purchase? This is where we're going to define your approval matrix. All right, so if anyone's been through a demo with me, the first two questions I'll ask is, you know, what you want to capture on the form, send me your approval matrix, because this is where the money is in the purchase request tool, right? We've built the wireframe, now we just populate it with your data, and then we're going to find the appropriate person, me obviously in this case, my demo site, to create an approval task for. So once it queries this list and creates that approval task, they're going to be notified, right? You saw when I was in Teams, my thing go off, my notification go off, right? To notify me that, hey, I have a new request that I need to approve. So what happens is that in the application, just open one up here, it'll create an approval task and assign it to the purchase request. So now I'm looking at this through the lens of purchasing, right? I see that it was submitted and we're waiting on Ryan to approve. Now, this person's view, right? The approver's view is going to be a little different. They can see it, like we've given them the visibility through the Teams app to come in and see their approvals and actually update their tasks through this My Approvals piece in Teams, right? To be able to update the form and approve it. We've also given them the ability to approve through what we call an adaptive card in Teams. This is like an email notification going to specifically to the approver. That's one question I'll clarify. One question I get a lot that I'll clarify right now. Does this go to everyone? No, it goes to the specific person it's targeted or it's assigned to, right? It goes to, you know, CC sales demo in this case. And then the third option, if I would have had it open, you would have heard it go off too, is through email, right? Did I open it twice? I must have. Maybe I did have it open. Well, who knows? Sorry, but yeah, okay, so here's the third option. Okay, a request has been submitted. They have a link to that task in the Teams app, or they can actually approve, deny, or send back this request through email, right? So they can make a decision here and it updates that task. Now, once the tasks are approved, I'm just going to go in and approve it through here. And it routes through its, you know, approval tree. It'll notify everyone, all the appropriate people, maybe end user, request submitter, that it's been approved, you know, the various people in the approval process that it's been approved, and then finally, you know, finance or purchasing that it's been approved. Once it works its way through, it's, you know, all approved. Now here's where we hit that split, right? Out of the box, let's talk about out of the box first. Here we go, we got our two levels of approvals, we've seen everything. Now we're gonna create a purchase order. Level 2 telling me I have to approve. So we'll go through purchase order. Now we're gonna track the receivable of the items, right? We have all these purchase orders and we need to track them. So you can see we have statuses. So you can track the PO as like an overall status, not yet ordered, on order from vendor. What do I have in here? Shipped, right? I think is another one. I can't remember. Yeah, shipped from vendor. And these drop downs are going to be specific to you guys. You let us know what we populate in here, and we'll get that carried over. So you can track the status, but then you can also track the line items. right? The individual line items, as well as the overall status, that's the wrong button, right? As well as the overall status of the request. So I think what's important about this piece, in my opinion, is that for people like me who move too quickly, and maybe they say, oh, I received one of these. You know how like Amazon, if you get, half on one order or half on another, you can mark that it's been partially fulfilled or partially received. You don't get people like me who come back in and say, oh, I got both. Oopsies. You already received one, right? So you have the ability to put some fail safes in so you don't go over the received quantity, right? Gives you that ability to do so. Now you'll see in this case, it's going to make some assumptions like we've received all the items, therefore the PO has been fulfilled, right? And it basically just moves through the different statuses to be, open, to be ordered, open orders, to be ordered, fulfilled, reconciled, right? It's really in the out of the box version, it's the tracking the status, tracking the items, filling in some metadata associated to the request, maybe like check, date paid, invoice number. And then if you'd like, the physical PO as well. This is my favorite tool in Nitro Studio. It's called our Print Manager. It gives us the ability to create a rich text print template. It could be PDF, it could be Word, it could be Excel. But if you're looking for a physical document, we can create one for you, or you can create one. But this is kind of a standard example of what that would look like. Now the other side, a little bit more technical side, and I'm not going to go too in depth into it, but I do want to talk about it because I will say the use case for our purchase request tool is about 50-50. 50 being what I just showed, the approval and the receivable of the items. The other side is wrapping to an ERP system. So the approval comes in, or the request comes in, it gets approved, and now we want to push that information to SAP, to NetSuite, to Dynamics, to Cal eProcure, to Passport, like whatever. How does that happen? So as a part of our workflow tool, we have the ability to make REST API calls and push information to that targeted tool set, right? We can invoke a web service, and essentially once it hits a certain status, like approved, it's going to pass that information to the SQL table or whatever it's stored in, right, in that third-party tool set. Populate the information there. In this case, it's posting. And then we also have the ability to get information back, a two-way sync or a one-way sync, depending on requirements, to push and pull information from SharePoint, from Office 365 to ERP, back to ERP, or back from ERP to SharePoint to notify end user of receivable of items, etc. The reason that we see the wrapper is to save on like ERP licenses, right? End users are already in Office 365. Why give them a license to the ERP system? And it just makes SharePoint like the system of truth in that case, the end all be all for knowledge. Yeah, from a feature set and functionality, I mean that's the high level. You can build out reports. Reports are dependent upon data captured in the system. Purchased by department, purchased by month, by status. It really, as long as, or whatever information we're capturing in the tool set in the form, you can report on. These are graphical reports. It also can link into Power BI. I get asked about that a lot. And then you can also do ad hoc reports. I think this is probably the most common one that we flesh out as a part of these tool sets for customers. You can search for, say, an item or a requester or anything, and it creates a custom report for you. And then that report can be exported to Excel or even PDF'd as well, right? Gives you that ability to do so. That is NITRO Purchasing in a nutshell. I would highly suggest you guys to ask questions. I see one about pricing, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But if you have any questions, shoot them my way, and we'll go from there. Now, the question right now is about cost. Can you talk about cost? Looks great, but would look like a broad average cost. That's correct. Yeah, a broad average cost is correct. You know, we see people with very straightforward use cases, you know, approvals based on dollar amounts, right? And out of the box form. Implementations like that, you know, are really straightforward, talking anywhere between 5 to 10 hours worth of work on our side to help you get that implemented, right? The base license cost is $3,588 annually, $3,588 annually. That's includes support, maintenance, bug fixes, upgrades, things like that. And that's for unlimited users. We're not charging you per user, right? Unlimited usage, base cost for ongoing things and updates and whatnot. And like I was saying, hours, yeah, very basic. Could be, like I said, in the 5-hour range, 10-hour range. We've seen some very complex implementations of this tool set, custom built, almost like whole custom built applications using this as a wireframe to connect to those third-party tools. And those have been in the 400-hour range. Now, 5 and 400 hours is a vast difference, right? Obviously, but it really is just going to depend on your requirements. And you know, folks like me or my engineering team will help you with best practices, try to pare down the scope, you know, try to give you ideas of how you can make things more efficient. But yeah, to answer the question, the license cost is fixed. So it's that one recurring cost year over year, the $3,588. And then the hourly rate is really going to be dependent upon your guys' requirements and how you want to tackle the project. If there are any other questions, I'll hang out for a minute or two. Oh, we got one, cool. When receiving in the items for the order, have you built the functionality to create an asset tag track assets? Great question. It's a really good question. Yeah, absolutely. The example, here, I'm gonna pull this up. If you guys have any questions or want to dig into Crow Canyon a little bit more, you go to our help site, our FAQ site, and browse through our articles. But one of these is how to integrate assets with purchase request system. This is under the assumption that you're using our asset tracking tool, which I think there's videos out there for. It's another, hold on. It's another application in our offering, NITRO Assets. But yeah, no, we use that. That principle can be applied to different asset tracking applications. But yeah, basically once the items are received, a workflow runs. And in this case, we are updating the purchase items list and creating assets in the asset list. So absolutely, we take over the quantity, really whatever information captured against the item you want to move over. But yeah, absolutely, you can move items from purchasing to the asset tracking very seamlessly. And again, the assumption is that we're using our asset tracking tool, but if you have your own, not a problem. The integration implementation would be pretty similar. Great question. Any other questions that you guys can think of before I let you go? I wanted to get you out of here at the bottom of the hour, so we got about 5 minutes if you want to throw a few more questions at me. Asset tracking, I won't go into too much detail. Sorry, this question. Can you talk about your asset tracking? We would be interested in that as well. Yeah, so asset tracking, let's do another demo offline. You guys can reach out to me or Krista directly, and I'll schedule a time to walk through that with you. Briefly, it's a SharePoint list with connections into like our ticketing tool, our purchasing tool, like I just talked about, the ability to assign assets to users, checkout assets, integrations with Intune, recurring maintenance, preventative maintenance, what you would expect in an asset tracking tool. It's just embedded inside of that 365 environment. Yeah, if you want a more in-depth demo, just Krista can ping you or I can, and we'll get that set up for you. It's a good question. That goes for anybody. If anyone wants to see assets in conjunction with purchasing, just let us know and I'll be happy to do a separate call with you guys. But we got to keep the YouTube video under 30 minutes, so I can't go too much further. Any other questions? Anything else that I can help you guys with while you got me? Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you guys go then. Guys, have a great rest of your day. Appreciate the time and effort sitting through this. I know it's a lot in a half an hour, so thanks for the questions and the participation. Like Krista said, she's gonna send the recording out after the fact. For those interested, I'll set up another demo for you guys to go through the asset tracking tool, or just you wanna go through purchasing in more depth. You guys have a great day, great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Krista, anything else you wanna add before I let them go?
I appreciate you walking us all through this today, Ryan.
No problem.
Some great questions today. Really appreciate everyone joining us. And as Ryan said, I think a few of you have had some inquiries I see about getting some time scheduled. So not to worry. Feel free to shoot us an email at hello@crowcanyon.com if you'd like to get some other questions answered, get some one-on-one time. We can talk about assets. We can talk about all the other options that we have here. And really appreciate everyone joining us today. I think that'll do it, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Krista. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.